Hey, I'm William Petrow. Welcome to PetrowLine. This is our vodcast that we've been working on actually for the past few months. Unfortunately, we're not at the studios in New York City, but we're going to do our best to entertain you guys as best we can during the quarantine here. So I'm coming to you from Quebec. Hope you guys enjoy.
Hey guys, it's Mike Spinelli from The Drive. I'm on PetrowLine this week with Bill Petrow, and not to be confused with Petrolicious. This is my, what I call the shit rav. I am in quarantine in New Rochelle. Enjoy the show. We talked about a lot of things. We did not talk about the shit rav, but listen, it's been good to me, lo these many years, and it is definitely my urban assault vehicle. But enjoy the show, and just do that. See ya.
So, Mike, like, it's been a long time we've been sort of knowing about each other, but not really sort of hanging out. I don't know, it's got to be close to 20 years at this point.
I mean, it's like, all right, so Jalopnik was 17 years ago, right? And that's when you were doing press fleet car delivery stuff, right? So
Yeah, I was at A&M, yeah, doing the press fleet stuff.
yeah. Yeah, so 17 is a long freaking time. And then when you were doing Broken Motorsports, I guess around the time I was at 0 to 60 magazine, the Brian Scotto joint from many years ago.
Yeah.
Know him from Hoonigan.
Maybe.
Maybe, or the really tall guy on the Segway on Jim Connor videos.
Right.
And then after that, when we started Drive, I guess were you working with Ryan Szymanczyk and then he was like, hey, you got to come to Union City,
Yeah.
and hang
Yeah.
out with
I mean,
Bill.
it was more like Ryan was working with me, not me working with Ryan.
Well,
Let's get that straight.
right. Yes. Yes, of course. Yeah, because I think we were like when I started doing After Drive, and I was looking around locally for stuff to do and people to talk to. We really wanted to do some rally stuff because first of all, Ryan, who was doing some production and shooting for Drive anyway, and was helping out with After Drive whenever he could, whenever he was in town. It was like, yeah, let's go over and do a thing on how to get started in rallying, right? And was that I'm trying to think the first time that we ever came to Broken Motorsports and did a show. Was it when was it just you, or was
No, it was me, Raph, and Wyatt.
oh, Wyatt Knox, right? Of course. I don't know how I forgot Wyatt, right? Wyatt
Yeah.
from T O'Neill, right? Exactly, right. So we did that. And then right, and Raph, who was going to be he's going to do his first co-driver experience.
Yeah, with Wyatt. Yeah.
Right, which was weird because when he was at Jalopnik, when I came back to Jalopnik in 2011, he was like, almost like a little bit more, maybe a glorified intern. Like he was like a
Right.
editor, assistant editor, and we shaved his head on camera because this weird. Sorry, to digress and to do the whole
Yeah.
there was a shaver company that somehow was branded their shaver motor as a Ferrari motor. So we got a Ferrari mechanic to shave Raf's head and like do a review of the shaver with the Ferrari motor in it. Yeah, anyway,
Oh my God.
it was good time.
Yeah. But yeah, that was the show, and we even talked about that whole scenario with Raph and his head getting shaved and all the stuff. But yeah, I mean that was the first time we had done like a show together.
I think. Well, yeah, I know it was the first time we did a show together, but yeah, I mean, I don't know, we had met up and sort of re-met each other the one day when Caswell was in the city, and we all just kind of sat at a bar and for
Oh,
way too long and drank beers for way too long as usual.
fucking Caswell, right? Okay, so that's really funny. So I was thinking like when Ryan had been working on My Life as a Rallyist, that series that he was doing. So he was working at your shop with
Right.
you and you guys on the cars that he was doing for that. So this is all happening between like 2013 and 2015, I guess, right now. So it's like a 2-year period.
Yeah, something like that. I forget what the years were exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a while ago.
Well, right. So Caswell comes. So right. So I did one. So this is when I was doing this talk show thing because on Drive when we were doing it for YouTube, YouTube had us on the hook for like 130 hours of programming a year,
Right.
and we needed to come up with ways to fill the time that was cheap so that we could spend more money on Chris Harris and Matt Farah and Mike Musto and like actual car stuff.
Right.
So I decided, yeah, what the hell? I'll do this talk show and we'll spend no money on it. And we'll basically just get whoever's in town to come to the fake living room we built and talk shit about cars. So Caswell comes in, and he came in to talk about that $500 rally experience that he talked about on Jalopnik when he went to Rally
Right.
Mexico.
Yeah.
G30. Yeah, and then the three of us go out. This is great. We went to that Irish bar around the corner from the old Drive studio, and we were drinking Guinness. It was like 2 p.m. and I figured
it was like the middle of the afternoon.
Right. So it was like 2 p.m. We go in and like the three of us are bullshitting like super loud and like Caswell loud, because Caswell loud is like a different kind of loud. And we get to 5 o'clock and we're like, screw it, let's keep going. And then like I don't think we got out of there. I don't even remember what time did we get out of there. Midnight, because then you guys went out drinking after. Like, yeah, I think I got one of the last trains back to Westchester, and then you freaking guys went out, and I think you guys were out until like 4 a.m. Like
probably
I was out, like I tapped out at like 2. So it was like 2. Well, it was like 10 hours. I tapped out at 10 hours.
Yeah, 10 hours. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean honestly, I don't even remember because there's been so many times like that with Caswell, even in New York City, which is like a rare occasion because he's not in the city much, But like even for the New York City, there's been so many times that me and him have been out till like the sun comes up in New York City that I don't even remember. So I mean it's just kind of crazy how it all sort of comes together, and how things have evolved over the years with your end of things on the media end, constantly being on the media end, and then me sort of just being always almost like a support for media. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it was great because what the New York, sort of the Northeast, especially New York and our little world, it's such a small. It's not really small. I think because there's just so many people, so it's not as small as I think a lot of people in the country think about the car scene. It's actually bigger than people think, but it's still, it's very specific because everybody does seem to know each other and at some level. And we have to keep coming up with sort of inventive, cool things to do because we can't just run out to the canyons, and do a great video.
We're not in LA.
Winter, right?
We're not in LA. Or San Diego or San Francisco or whatever. We're not in an easy spot where we can go do that. I mean, it takes us an hour to get to any decent roads. You know. So, which I mean, I guess if you're in LA, it might take you 3 hours to get to canyons, depending on where you are. But
True.
They are right there. Right now is a great time to go. I mean, there's no traffic anywhere.
Yeah, right. Exactly right. I mean, if you don't get stopped at a checkpoint or something. I mean, I'm in New Rochelle, right? So I'm sort of ground zero of the outbreak in New York. You know, knock on wood. I mean, I've been in the house basically for about a month, but um,
Yeah.
so a little bit stir crazy, but like I've been busy with work and stuff and keeping that. But like, yeah, I mean, everywhere else, I mean, you could jump in a car right now and go anywhere, and there's nobody around and there's no traffic, and it's almost like, well, if there wasn't this fucking virus, like it would be kind of an amazing time to be doing car stuff, But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. I keep thinking about photo shoots and like just the fact that there's nobody around. Like,
yeah,
I mean, you know what it's like. I mean, you've been on commercial shoots. I've been on commercial shoots. It's a nightmare for them to clear the streets, especially in New York City. Oh my God.
yeah,
You know, you've got 40 PAs running around trying to close off people and trying to stop traffic and oh God, it's such a nightmare.
yeah, yeah. And then you get New
So
Yorkers, and like New Yorkers are. I know a lot of people talk shit about New Yorkers, but like we're not complete assholes. It's just that we're like when you're walking down the street and you're sort of thinking about something else. Sometimes like it's not like I'm being a dick by walking into somebody else's shoot, which I've
right,
done
right.
before, you know.
Yeah.
So PAs have to be on their toes and like moving people around, but like I've done that where I've just sort of barreled right into somebody's in the middle of somebody's shoot and then gone, oh dude, sorry.
Yeah.
Some people don't apologize, they just keep walking, but like, that's
Yeah, for the
what happens in New York.
right, yeah. And for the most part, you're right though. I mean, most people are pretty like okay with it. They're a little annoyed, like the PA's got a lot of stuff to deal with, but I mean, for the most part everybody's like more curious like what is happening? What's the photo shoot? What's the commercial? What's the TV show or whatever it is? They want to see TV stars. They're not realizing it's mokes like me and you just out there, driving cars or whatever,
Right.
but like, for the most part, they're like curious. They want to know, oh, cool, I saw a Cadillac commercial shoot, or I saw this, or I saw that, like, they want to know like who's going down on the TV show kind of a thing more than anything. So,
Yeah.
they're more curious.
Right. And the other thing though, like when the thing that annoys some New Yorkers, because at some point, if you live in the city, they're going to be filming something on your block and you're
Yeah.
going to be trying to get out of your house or your apartment building in the morning and you're going to want to go to work or go wherever you're going and you're going to but come out of that place and there's going to be a Law and Order shoot and you're going to trip over Chris Noth and and some PA's going to tackle you. It's like, and then you're trying to get home and they're like telling you to stop and you're like, nah, I got to get home, I got to take a leak, or whatever. And
Yeah.
like nope, and you're like, fuck you. And then they so and if it's a movie they could take it over for like a week. And
Oh
so
yeah.
all right, this is getting enough enough already by
Yeah.
but
Yeah. For the
yes,
most part, though, those people are compensated, and at least when it's movies, they're somewhat compensated. I don't know how the TV show stuff operates, but
yeah.
yeah.
Well,
But I mean,
good, yeah.
yeah, exactly, yeah. But I mean, like right now, I mean, it's like a perfect time, like you're saying, it's like a perfect time to go out and do photo shoots, do film shoots, whatever, in places that are impossible to get rid of people. Times Square, maybe World Trade. God, I mean, well, World Trade these days. I mean, it's always been sort of like a ghost town at night, So
Well,
like at night, it's like okay, but like during the day, it's still mobbed.
yeah, I'm really surprised we haven't seen any of those takeover guys do like a Times Square takeover. I guess it's not that much fun when there's nobody around, but like I mean, it would be really, all right. I mean, it would be really messed up if they were to, I mean, they're in their cars, so everybody's socially distanced, so I guess it's all right. But like, I mean, I'm surprised we haven't seen a video of those guys, those takeover guys, and I'm forgetting what they're called, but like,
Yeah.
in the middle of the night, 2 a.m., like a massive one with like 1,000, 1,000
Right.
cars, Queens and Brooklyn and Long Island and Westchester, just
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, my buddy Justin at Flipsco, he's done a few of those, And I
Yeah.
don't know if he's running them or if he's just part of them, but he's always got like a bunch of cars that come with him and go do that sort of thing. So like, Justin, this is I'm telling you right now, now's the time. Go do it.
I miss
You know,
those guys. I was supposed to, yeah, I wanted to meet those guys at the car club when they did
right.
the M show, and I missed it. I would think I was away somewhere. Um, but yeah, it's Flipco, and then what's the other group? I can't. They're doing merch and stuff too. I can't think of the.
Yeah, I can't remember. Prime,
Yeah,
maybe Prime
maybe
NYC.
Prime NYC.
Yeah, yeah.
There are a
But
lot.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like, there's a lot of stuff going on in New York when it comes to cars and a lot of groups, and there's always been a lot of like the drag racing scene, even when I was a kid, was pretty was
pretty
popular
big.
and like all over the place. I mean, like Hunts Point was always big,
Oh
and
yeah.
Yonkers and Francis Lewis Boulevard and Queens and other parts of Queens that I'm forgetting, and Brooklyn and the Causeway and all that shit. Like that goes back. So yeah, New York has had, well, New York and the New York area. So like, I mean, Jersey, Westchester, that whole
Yeah.
scene. There's been cars.
Greater Metro New York.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so and people don't realize it. It's like the urban car scene is really a thing. It really
Oh
is,
yeah.
especially the tuner and modification crowd. Like that's always been where, like, I think the coolest shit is in New York, because everybody's got something behind a garage. Like everybody's
Oh
got a
yeah.
garage in some part of wherever they are, and they rent a garage, or their grandfather has a house in some part of somewhere, and
Oh
there's
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm at the point now where I've cleaned up the shop a bunch since the last time you've been there, and we've got a bunch of 4-post lifts and some space, and I've got people that are renting space for me to keep their race cars or their Radwood cars or whatever, project cars, that sort of thing, stuff that they want to keep, but they right now they don't have a place to work on it, or they just need a space to keep it through the winter or whatever. I mean, I'm doing the same thing right now for people that are local and people that I sort of know, and just kind of helping them out. It helps me out, helps pay my rent, but
yeah,
but yeah, it's the same thing. I mean, we're all stacked on top of each other, but like in a 25-mile radius from like Times Square, Midtown Manhattan, it's like the car culture in 25-mile radius from there is insane, because it just encompasses so much space, even though like 25 miles doesn't sound that big of a radius. I mean, we're in that 25-mile radius, there's got to be, I don't know, 13 million people, like
oh
whatever
yeah,
it is.
oh, it's
I
something
mean,
big. Yeah, I mean, New
it's
York
a
City.
massive number.
Yeah, New York City alone is 8.4, right? So you start,
Right.
Westchester is like another 800,000, but then you get like Nassau and Suffolk County, which are like 2 million each, or more.
Right.
Maybe Long Island's up to 6 or something. I mean, and then Jersey is massive. The density
Yeah.
in Jersey is massive. So yeah, I mean, you're well into 10, 15 million people, and
Yeah.
even if it's a tiny percentage of those people that are into cars, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
and
mean,
then and
even
then
if it's like like I don't know, 500,000 people. I mean, that's a a lot of people.
yeah, and then going upstate, and then then if you start bringing in like the guys and sort of down into Jersey a bit, like the English town,
Yeah.
it used to be English, but I mean, I don't know, like the Club Loose drift guys, and like the upstate rally guys, and like then the ice racing guys that got screwed this year because there was no ice.
Oh God. Yeah.
All that stuff is pretty big here. I mean, it's not California big, but it's it's decent.
I think the only reason why California might have the upper hand on us is just because like import, like JDM import car culture has always been such a big thing in like SoCal. You know, that and like muscle cars, right? Hot rods, like that thing. It's always been like a breeding ground for automotive enthusiasts on some level, you know, and they've got the upper hand because the weather's nicer, and you know, when they get out of the city, it's just desert. I mean, there's nothing out there but awesome roads and you know, desert stuff. I mean, they can do all different kinds of stuff. You know, I mean, people that we don't have much of an off-road community in New York City, obviously, you know, but you know, megatropolis is, you know, between DC and Boston, it's so big, you know, I mean, you'd have to, I have friends that have side-by-sides, you know, and that's like the closest thing you can get to like real off-roading around, you know, like Baja style off-roading.
Oh,
know?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's tough.
So,
It's tough. Like upstate, you have, you know, Old Forge, and like friends of mine used to race motocross up there.
yeah.
And like Jeep trails and fire trails, but nothing like long, you know, where you could really like get your trophy truck and or your, you know, whatever, what's that?
Yeah.
What are they called? The ones with it's why am I
Oh,
forgetting?
like the sand rails?
Yeah, well, yeah, sand rails, well, all that stuff that's high speed, long distance off-roading, with
Yeah.
the long travel, Baja style kind of stuff that we just there isn't that kind of space here. Like you can't do any of that stuff. Rock crawling maybe, but not even,
Yeah.
because like you go out west and like the rock crawling out there compared to here is like
Different. Yeah.
totally different. So I mean, there's people in the Appalachians that are doing stuff, but it's like mostly weekenders, I guess, right? I mean, like I don't want to, like I guess you go down south and you can do the sand drags in places like West Virginia, so it's not that far away. But there's stuff all over the place, but it's all sort of close quarters,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
compared to the West, obviously.
Yeah. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So,
Of course,
but,
rally stages and that fall in that category too.
yeah, and you know, it's crazy because rally stages out west. I mean, there's no more rallies really in Southern California. I mean, there was a couple of small rallies, you know, club rally style stuff. Nothing really big. I mean, there hasn't been a big rally like God, since Rim of the World was the last big Southern California rally. I mean, that was like, God, that ended in like, I don't know, 2004, 2005. I mean, it ended pretty early on in this, you know, century. But there's a couple of small ones out there that you know, barely have any entries. I mean, they're usually struggling to get entries. I mean, they have like, you know, 10, 15 people, you know, if they're lucky. I mean, 10, 15 might be a high number for entries out there. So, I mean, you know, but it's just weird how, like, you know, that whole southwest area that has all of these amazing roads, open land, stuff that could be primed for stage rally is not really being used anymore. You know, a lot of people, you know, there's still some people out there that are trying to keep some of these, you know, grassroots sort of entry level rallies moving. But I mean, how much can you just keep on trying to make the move when you're only getting 10 entries? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird in that sense, where like out here, kind of pretty much the rest of the country, you know, at least the northern part of the country. That's the other part that's weird about rally. Like the northern part of the country, from like Maine to Oregon, Washington, and everywhere in between, the upper section, there seems to be quite a lot of rallies. But I mean, you go down below like the Mason-Dixon line, you've got like maybe a handful of rallies. I mean, 2, 3. I mean, it's not a lot, you know. So it's weird how like rally just seems to exist in like the upper, you know, latitudes versus, you know, Southern America for whatever reason.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's funny how, you know, Texas is interesting. Maybe it's partly the heat, but I mean, you know, what's the Texas rally? I'm blanking on that rally school around Austin.
Rally Ready.
Rally Ready, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. There's a scene there. I wonder if it's just waiting for somebody to, really set up something.
Yeah. Well,
Then
I mean,
again,
there used to be an old SCCA club rally there called the Paris Rally. It used to be in Paris, Texas. So, I mean, but that also hasn't run for years.
yeah, but it seems like Texas. That it's interesting about. I think there's something to talk about it when it comes to, and I'm not an expert by any means, but like when it comes to land usage and land ownership and and who and liability and the idea of what are the laws in the state. I think it gets really complicated about what landowners are going to allow on the land that they own, right? And public land, it's very difficult to get any kind of racing on Bureau of Land Management stuff. I mean, I know that anybody who's ever had to do tried to do a land speed record on the Black Rock, they jump through a lot of hoops with the Bureau of Land Management. So I mean, that's something to dive into that I don't know almost anything about, and I would love to hear more about what might be holding Rally back in terms of land use.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of it is a lot of it is what you're saying. It's a lot of it is BLM, permits and issues and, a lot of things like that. I mean, of course, it's kind of ironic because so many people are, and we're not trying to be political at all on this show at any time, but it's kind of ironic how, Trump has come in and now that he's sort of opened up a lot more land for public use. I mean, of course, he's looking at it as dollars and cents, bring in big corporations, oil companies and whatever, mining companies and all this crap to really destroy the land, not necessarily preserve it. But with that happening, it's also opening up the possibility for more races and land use on that end. So, BLM and state forestry and stuff like that, those sort of branches are now letting the leash off a little bit, and they're allowing more things to happen based on that. So while it sucks from a land preservation sort of thing, the land that was being preserved originally that sort of kept racing out of it is now being reopened. It's kind of it's a good thing for off-road racers and ralliers and people who just like to be in the outdoors, not at a closed racetrack. But it's not good from the sense of trying to actually preserve the land.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it sucks that politics get stuck in it a lot, but I mean, I think if you sort of look at it, sort of rise up above the politics part, and you sort of look at, I think there are ways that you can serve both environmental goals and keep rallies and off-road racing in general going, and if everybody maybe has to compromise on a couple of things, but I mean, I think there's a way to do it. But yeah, unfortunately, like it all that eventually does come down to whatever the political climate of wherever it is. And it's at the state level. I mean, federal is one thing, but like at the state level, it can also be very complicated too. And then like out in the Pacific Northwest, then you get into, we were in Oregon, we were shooting something for Driving NBC Sports, the show that we did that's on hold right now because everybody's home. But we did a show where we were sort of following the Oregon Trail, and we had a aerial Nomad, and I had a Jeep Wrangler, and then Alex Roy had one of those big overland trucks. Like
right.
Yeah, I think it was
like the Earth Roamers or whatever.
It was a 4-wheel drive Sprinter van that opened up in their camper.
Oh, sweet.
So, yeah, it was cool. And so with 3 different vehicles, we're sort of going through the parts of the Oregon Trail that we could follow, and we were looking at the map, and the land was, at least, to our stupid eyes, it was designated public. But what's interesting in Oregon is it's very much of a frontier state where landowners have the rights of landowners are sacrosanct, and also they don't have to jump through a lot of hoops to help interlopers like us figure out which land is private and which land is public. That's all been placed on the user, which is, look, that's the way they see it. Right. So, you don't have to mark the land where it starts and it's your land compared to where the public land is. So we took a wrong turn and drove onto somebody's land, and they called the cops, and not I think maliciously would be, I don't know why. I mean, they called the cops basically because I think they're concerned about fires, really. So
right.
When people are on your land, I mean, we're talking about a rancher, or I think this was like part of a big ranch.
Right.
So, of course, we get to the end of the trail and we go to get back and the cops have all surrounded the trail and they're waiting to. I mean, it was kind of frightening because there's all the cops, and then there's the landowner with, in his side by side with a shotgun,
Right. Yeah.
We're like, oh boy, so, and we all, they were harsh, man. We all started out with misdemeanor criminal trespassing, and
right.
We subsequently were able to work with the the DA out there, and through a couple of things that we did in terms of fines and supporting the local the Forest Fire Commission. I don't know what that was called.
Yeah.
We worked with them, and they sort of helped us out of a misdemeanor, which, that's just below a felony. I mean,
yeah,
that's serious. That stays on your record. I mean, I don't at this point in my life, but like, it's like, it's serious. So they take it really seriously. And so when you go to try to organize an event, it's like, do these guys they have to be rally fans themselves. They have to deal with liabilities of it. So you're dealing with the way that different kinds of states see the use of their land anyway. So the federal is one thing, and then you get these sort of, I can't imagine the complexity of starting to.
I mean, it's years, it's years in going to, town halls, county meetings, like, that sort of stuff, like a lot of it starts at like a town meeting sort of a thing. Like if you have like a city or a town that is a good epicenter for having service and registration and stuff for the event, you sort of start out there and then, figure out the channels that you need to contact for, the actual stage road permits and things like that from there. But yeah, I mean, it's super involved. I mean, I've put on some rally sprints at Englishtown, closed property, a property that normally runs cars. And let me tell you, that was like a big thing to organize and, by itself, so I can't even imagine what, the guys and girls are doing at stage rally level to, close roads and keep permits and, keep the local community happy and everybody involved. I mean, it takes a lot of time. Number one, of course, a lot of time, but it takes a lot of money too. There's a reason why rally is so expensive, and it's not because the people on the back end, the organizers, I mean, they're just volunteers. They're not making money. They're covering their costs, for putting on the event, and a lot of times when you only have 10 or 15 guys showing up for a local little club rally, I mean, those people are taking money out of their pockets to make sure that the event is happening,
Yeah.
So it's a really weird dynamic in the sense of just money and cents and time put into things. I mean, the people that are organizing these things, they're not getting their time back. They're not being paid for their time in a lot of ways either. They're literally just paying for the road permits. They're paying for regrading the roads. They're paying, like you said, donating to the local fire department, donating to the local ambulance service. That money that we put out as competitors, our entry fees, they're not going to somebody to, like, they're not going in somebody's pocket to make money. It's there to, serve the local community and make sure that the race is happening. And that's about all it's doing. It's not doing anything else. So, a lot of people complain, oh, rally's so expensive. It's like, this is what it costs to go play in the woods,
Right. Right.
It is what it is. And in fact, if we had to try to do it on our own, like I just wanted to go out and play in the woods, it would cost me 30 times, 40 times what it would cost one competitor to do one stage rally. Because the reality is that entry is just, covering all of that stuff, and dividing it across, whatever, 30, 40, 50 entries. So it is a big undertaking, and it's I don't know. I give those people a lot of credit. I mean, I certainly don't have enough time in my day to even just hold a rally sprint. I haven't had a rally sprint at Englishtown now for almost 3 years. I've been just trying to find the time to go down there to sort of see the new lay of land now that Englishtown has been sort of leased off a lot of their property. We've been limited on the amount of property that we can use as a rally sprint. So, like, I need to get back down there and I need to go through and walk with the owners and see what we could even use to then have another Englishtown rally sprint, which I do want to do. I mean, it's just things have been insanely crazy, but that takes a lot of time and effort. I mean, the first time we did a rally sprint down there, I mean, I don't know, I must have taken a trip down to Englishtown 5 or 6 times, and then the whole week before the event, I was down there every single day, setting up, making sure things were where they needed to be. And then it took 2 days on the back end to tear everything down, get things back into place. So, I mean, I spent 10 days of my time not being at my shop, not making any money, and that's just for a 1-day rally sprint.
Yeah.
So,
It's a complex thing. Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. It's interesting. It's sort of, you got to have a really big scene and everybody has to pitch in and do that stuff. But at the same time, like the big decisions that have to get made by somebody, who's an expert at the thing. And so, it takes a lot. Yeah. I mean, just exactly what you're saying. It takes a ton to run this stuff. So
yeah.
It's gonna be interesting to see after we start leaving our houses again. Like I'm wondering if there's going to be so much pent up demand for getting back out there that, if we can get out there before the end of this year sometime, like even if it's the fall, I mean, summer gets a little bit hot anyway, but like, I think there maybe like the pent up demand will mean that more people want to do that stuff and want to get out there, because they've just been up for so long. So maybe that's the thing. I mean, maybe that'll be big, and maybe people get so used to doing sims that all just goes away completely. I don't know.
Oh yeah. And I mean, of course, that's obviously a big thing. That's a lot of us racers have been sort of contemplating. I mean, I've never been a sim racer. I mean, as Rob is writing some articles for you, about transferring from real racing to sim racing. Of course, he's a much higher level driver than me. But, all of us, I mean, everybody who's, from grassroots to pro racing, I mean, everybody seems to be sort of now, all of a sudden, now, I need seat time. I need to be, something. And everybody's like, yeah, how do I buy a sim? How do I set it up? Where do I even put it in my house or my apartment or, whatever, and I'm on that same level. I haven't, I've never been a gamer ever in my life. I think the last time I religiously played video games was like the Nintendo Entertainment System when it first came out in the 80s.
Wow. Okay.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that was like I never had Super Nintendo. I never had PlayStation. I never had anything, because I was always too busy playing outside. I was either mountain biking or skateboarding or going skiing or soccer or playing with my cars or whatever. And like I just never saw the value in playing video games. Now everybody's like, oh, let's go sim racing and actually get paid to do it. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah. It's really funny because I was only sort of halfway in, and I would dabble, and like if I knew somebody who had a good setup, and then eventually, like at the last office of the Drive in Brooklyn when Time Inc. owned it, we put together an Alienware PC setup with project cars, and we were working with who's that company that does project cars? I'm forgetting right now. Crazy something. I'm forgetting, but we built we had a little chair. We built a pretty decent setup, and it was great. And I sort of really got into it for a while. We were thinking of doing a 24-hour Le Mans race, and we were doing all kinds of different, like old Porsche 962s and 956s, and
all the cool stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so I really got, but it was like, it was after years of I didn't have, I mean, I think I had a Sega Genesis,
right,
and played, Need for Speed, I think up to 3 or something, and then after that it was like, oh, I'm an adult, like I have too much other shit to do. So,
right, yeah, exactly, yeah. And that was kind of like the thing for us, right? Like we grew up in a time where video games growing up wasn't really a thing, for like a lot. If you were like the kid in the neighborhood who had an Atari, or like the kid in the neighborhood who got a Nintendo when it first came out, you were like, oh man, everybody had to come over and you were having, video game parties, you know what I mean? But it wasn't so much a thing like it is today, where like everything is so digital for kids these days, I mean, even like 10 years after us, I mean, was just like, they were born into it.
Well, it's funny, like even my first job, I remember the IT guys would get together on the LAN, and they would play Doom and Quake and fucking like, I'm forgetting the big one. Anyway, but this was like up mid 90s, and was like, oh shit, those guys, and they would be like, nah, you're not invited. If we're like, oh, I guess, like, okay, fine. And it's whatever, like, but they were, so I didn't make the transition into adult gamer, because I think that is, I mean, listen, like once people had T1s at work, like real broadband, and they could do real networked first person shooters. Yeah, I mean, I get like that got big, that really.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it seems like, and it's not just with racing games. I mean, it's with like all kinds of games. I mean, it seems to be like every game that's online, whether it's like, I don't even know what the names of the games are. It's like I can only reference Nintendo games. It's like Legends of Zelda, type games, and like obviously all the racing games, and there's the like Call of Duty is okay. That's one I know. I don't even know if that's a current one, but like stuff like that, where like you're going out and shooting people, and it's like an army, and you can work with a team and whatever. Like that stuff's really cool. I just never got into it. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like,
well, the one thing I love is the Grand Theft Auto, when people like act out some of the shit that happens on there. Like I'll have a rabbit hole on YouTube and watch, like if somebody's really good at like the ad-libbing, and putting on the different voices and doing funny shit.
Oh God, yeah.
Like that stuff I really like. And but not as a player, like as a fan, as a watcher. And that's the weird thing about, so that's, I think the thing that I am most surprised with when it comes to Sims is other people like me watching other people play video games, because like that doesn't mean anything to like it's like the time you had to spend while your buddy was playing and you were just sitting there eating
Right.
Cheetos or whatever. But now it's like with Twitch and this GTA stuff, it's like the experience of watching it. Like, for example, I was watching the F1 race the other day, right?
Right.
And it started out, it was this total mayhem. Not the one on iRacing. There's one that they did on I think on the F1 video game.
Right.
It's just like it was like there were a couple of people that were good. Like Max Verstappen was really good, right? Like you figure he's gonna,
Right. Yeah, of course. Those
like,
guys.
yeah, but there were some of the older guys, and like there was cars would, I was laughing out loud at like cars spinning around the track and like somebody screwing up and like taking out like the entire field. So I mean, yeah, I mean, I get that like the competition part of it, you know, is is not quite as interesting to watch as if you're unless you're, you know, between watching a sim and watching the real thing. But like
Yeah.
the other, and there's some other entertainment value in there too. Like it gets funny, and I don't know whether racing is supposed to be funny, but like maybe that's not the point of racing. But there is another, you know, there's some other entertainment value in the Sims too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and of course, right now, where if you're playing like a long sim game a day, like so, there's obviously like the big ones that a lot of people are talking about right now are like the, you know, the F1 race. That's, you know, all the pro F1 racers, you know, doing their sim stuff and racing each other. There's like the NASCAR stuff, you know, and I guess some level, I haven't seen it or really heard about it, but I guess there's some hearsay of WRC guys doing the same thing. But like, you know, for all of us at home who are just playing Sims, you know, I'm not one of them, but you know, for everybody else that has a sim, you know, is lucky enough to have a sim right now. I mean, it could be like exercise. It could almost be considered exercise because like none of us are moving. You know, I mean, if you're lucky enough to live in an area where you could walk outside, but like keep the social distancing thing, cool,
Right.
like good for you, you know, but like you, I mean, you're not walking anywhere. I mean, it's like you're in the middle of it.
No,
You know?
I mean, the one good park that I have to walk in, I mean, I could walk around a little bit, but like they took over the park as a testing center, right? So they're
Right.
coming in and out of the park every day, people getting tested. And then, you know, so like, yeah, I don't have, I mean, there's definitely places to walk, but none of them are great.
Right. Yeah. Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah, I don't, but you're right. I mean, it is, you know, you know, here's the thing. Like, I'm not a racer, right? I know that, like, I'm a dabbler when it comes to, like, I'm very, very interested in cars, and so I can nerd out and hopefully come up with opinions about the cars if I'm doing a review or doing some other coverage of some kind. But
Right. Right.
real racers got to race. You know what I mean? Like, they don't, they need to. Like, you know what I mean? Like, those are the guys that are interesting to watch on Sims because they need to be there. They would be racing something at some level, no matter where they are. And having those guys have to stay home.
It's a nightmare.
I can't even imagine. Really.
It's a nightmare. It's like for me, I'm not even so like, you know, we haven't really discussed it on this show, but we have on some of the other shows, you know, but right now I'm in Quebec. So I'm not even, I'm at my wife's house in Quebec here. I have no sim. I have no cars, you know, like that I would normally be playing with at my shop. I mean, not that I have a sim at home, but when I am at home, New York City area, I have access to sims. You know, Classic Car Club has theirs, which is insane. This insane, you know, whatever, tens of thousands of dollars, you know, three projector, one big screen, thing. I mean, you've seen it. I'm sure you've been in it.
Well, yeah. I mean, and it's funny because that sim is really interesting. And if you, yeah, I think it's got to be a couple $100. But it's funny how like they can duplicate a lot of the forces, but they can't get the sustained G's at all because there's no way to simulate sustained G's. So they do they do their best with damping and hydraulics and stuff, but it's really still like you get in that Formula 2 car or whatever we were racing that day, and we're doing Watkins Glen, and it's close enough, man. It's really good.
Yeah.
And it's like you spend a couple hours in there and you get out and you're like, oh crap, I gotta go back.
Right.
So I get it. I get it.
I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, the one at Classic Car Club, I mean, the room is kind of small and they've got the three big sims in there, and like it gets so hot in there, and like, you really have to sort of be prepared from that end of things too. Like when you go there to just drive, I mean, not only is it hot in the room, but like you're like working the sims so much that like, especially with the formula cars, you're working the sims so hard that like you are just like, you yourself, you're overheating, and then it's really interesting to see just how hard it is on some of those real sim rigs to drive, and it's hard to keep the car straight. And, a lot of it is very similar to driving, but me as a real driver racer, like, to me, it's just like, it's so unrealistic.
Yeah.
It's realistic to a point, but then it's still just so unrealistic.
Right.
That like the natural feel of like the car, like the G's, like like when I'm racing, like my seat is mounted to the floor, but it's also mounted to the cage in the back. So like my seat doesn't move at all in my car, like independent of the car. I move with the car. So like everything that I'm driving, feeling, it's all a feel. And it's so hard for those simulators to create that same real feel that like I've always been sort of in denial about the whole sim thing, right? Because like it just doesn't compare, in my mind. But like from sort of like a practice standpoint of being able to drive the tracks, like iRacing is so real in the sense of the real road courses are programmed or scanned or however the hell they do it. I don't even know. The real race courses that you're going to race, VIR, Lime Rock, Watkins Glen, Laguna Seca, all of those things are so real in the sense of visual aspects that you can use it for just getting to learn the track.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like for me, it's always been that. It's never been more than that for me. It's always just been learn the track, or at least be close to knowing where your braking points are and what you can maybe do in a corner. But like reality is, it's not reality. It's just, to me, it's always been practice.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, if you get on a sim, at least especially something like iRacing, where they are scanning the track, and you go and you race the track in real life, you do kind of know where. I mean, there are two things, right? It's like if you've never been to the track before and you race the sim before you go to the track, you can pretty much get the braking points. I mean, like,
right.
if you're driving a similar car, but like you can, you really do get to know where everything is on a track. So, I mean, I'm saying this like it's news. I mean, everybody who's ever driven even like Forza, knows that works for them too. But that's sort of interesting because then you have pro drivers that are on sims a lot because they just don't have the opportunity, whether it's for the racing rules or whatever, economics or whatever, that they're not out there testing as much as they would like to. So they're on the sims anyway, especially NASCAR. You go down to Charlotte and you see that the big simulator that they have, it's insane.
Right.
And then the F1 guys are all on sims. So like sims are so big, like especially the good ones are such a big part of all racing development now. that
Yeah.
that they've gotten to be good, because in the old days it was like the gamers were better than the real drivers, and now the drivers are gamers too because they're all super young, and like, the sim thing is completely incorporated into racing development, in
Yeah.
such a way that like those guys, they're, you see them racing on Twitch or whatever, and they're
Yeah.
just as good as any gamer because they are on those sims, and they've incorporated that sims into their training and into their development. So,
Yeah.
to such a degree, it's like, this is the
Yeah.
time for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, even things like, even things that aren't like real racetracks, like uh, I don't know, streets of Long Beach or
Right.
Le Mans, obviously, is not a real course. It's just
Yeah.
streets for the most part. Even Nürburgring and all the big popular ones. Obviously, they've got those things so dialed in. But then you think about things like Pikes Peak. Pikes Peak. Some of the games have Pikes Peak. They have it long, they have it short. Some years it gets cut short, and for the most part, I've been up Pikes Peak. I can't tell you how many times, especially during race week, because once you have that badge around your neck, you can go up and down the mountain as many times as you want. It's one of those things where like even Pikes Peak is so digitally remastered that anybody can sort of drive it and kind of get the gist. I don't know what game it was, but my buddy Alex that used to work for me, he decided to buy this new game that had Pikes Peak on it or whatever. I drove it like the week after I'd come back from Pikes Peak, and I was just like, nope, this corner here is wrong, this corner is wrong, that corner's wrong. And it wasn't so much that the corner was wrong, it was that like the turn was there, but the camber wasn't right. So like if you're practicing on a sim and you go like, oh yeah, I've been here before, like I know Pikes Peak, and you go there and you're expecting to like it to be the same, and all of a sudden the turn is an off camber turn,
right,
when it should have been a non camber, like it just doesn't jive on a lot of senses. And the same thing with like rally and WRC, unless they're popular stages, that these game, programmers can go out and actually go through and program, they can get all the turns, but they're not going to see, the real time reality of being in that race is not going to match to whatever the game is going to give you, especially with rally, because it could be raining, there could be big rocks pulled out of the ground that come out of the corners from where the drivers. I mean, there's so many different dynamics to the rally end of sim racing that like it's almost, and maybe that's why for me it's been so unrealistic, because it's like I'm mostly a rally guy, and like whenever I drive a sim, I'm always trying to drive the rally stuff, and I'm just this isn't real.
It's a really good point. I mean, I think especially like, I mean, I could see Mount Washington. I mean, I think there are a lot of other opportunities for sims to get better for things that people just don't have opportunities to drive. It's one thing to drive like a Herman Tilke design track, because you scan that, it's going to be the same next year, it's going to be the same in 5 minutes than it is now. I mean, okay, it might be there changes in traction profile as after or like more rubber gets on the track, you change compound of the tires, and those tires leave parts of tire of different compounds. So I mean, there are going to be small changes, but you're right, like a rally stage, like even if you scan a famous rally stage, you're getting it at that moment in time. And the best that you could hope for is that the AI in the game changes. I mean, that's, I don't even know if they do this. This would be sort of an interesting sort of next level rally game, and they could be doing this now for all I know, because I don't know how.
I don't know either.
But it would be interesting to like scan a rally stage before the rally, scan it after, and then use the AI to change the dynamics of the track based on how the track or how the stage changes over the course of a rally as well
Right.
go over it. And so that, if you're doing like a real sort of career mode rally thing on your, on your sim, that you can really feel the changes that happen to a stage, right?
Yeah.
But I could totally see how a place like Pikes Peak, it would be so difficult to get right for a sim, because like the scanning of Pikes Peak, it has to be, it's just an enormous undertaking. But it would be great. I mean, street courses, obviously, because you can't just go race Long Beach, right? I mean, it's a damn street.
Right.
I mean, but I suppose that would be easier than a rally stage. Anything dirt. I mean, it's the changes that happen, that a good rally driver has to assimilate into their driving, other than what the co-driver's telling them,
Yeah, and I mean we see it, as we see it, on recce, we're in the US, we're doing recce at 25, 30 miles an hour, you know what I mean? We're not allowed to speed like in some other countries, to try to make that even more realistic, you know what I mean? But it's almost proportional, right? Like the competition here in the US, while some guys are good, those good guys are not compared to anything on the WRC level. You know what I mean? So while our recce speeds are slower, our overall speed is slower. WRC guys, they need to go faster on recce because they're like rockets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're like guided missiles through the freaking woods. But like it's sort of weird how like we do recce, a couple days before, or a day before we race, and there could be a massive change just in the time from recce to when we actually race it. Yeah. So like even the co-driver notes could be way wrong when you get into that first stage. Like if it's 100% dry when you do recce, but then it's poured rain overnight and you're going into that first stage and it's soaking wet. I mean, it's going to be, obviously, as a driver, your brain knows like, okay, it's raining. It's going to be a little bit more slippery. You want to change tires to a softer compound. You want to dial down the suspension a little bit. If people even get that far into it, a lot of drivers here in the U.S. do not. They usually just, if they have extra tires to change, they'll change them, but they won't get into suspension settings, especially not each stage where they can change the suspension. And a lot of that also plays in a recce. From a professional level, where you might want to change your suspension based on what is coming up in the notes, so there's a lot of things to play with, when going into a stage and how much of it changes through the course of a rally. I mean, if you're not first on the rally, if you're not first on the stage, like everybody isn't,
right. Right.
If you're not first on the stage, the first 5, 10, 15 cars that are ahead of you are just going to tear up the stage, and nothing's the same anyway.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So
sims are, sims. I mean, unless they're at a really high level in terms of AI, I don't see how you could really simulate rally. I don't know. I mean, and then thinking about watching it, right? Like, there's something about watching. When we were getting, however we had to get the WRC races, whether it's a subscription or whether we were downloading from somewhere or whatever, there was something about watching, like, the Norway, like the real snowy ones where it's Saturday morning, you got your coffee and you're sitting there and you're watching these guys tear it up in the snow. There's something about that, knowing that that's the real, like that's really what's going on. That a sim, I just don't think a simulation can capture that experience as a viewer. So I mean, that's one thing. Right. So I think it's bad on both sides, or it's going to be less entertaining on both sides. First of all, for the driver, it's less realistic, and then for a viewer, I don't know if I would get as much out of watching stage rally as I even do out of watching simulated F1 races. So no, that's one to I don't know if that'll ever happen.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it's something until we were talking about it just now. Like it's something that I've never really thought about, but it's interesting how it all comes together. I'd almost prefer, like you're saying, I'd almost prefer to watch an F1 game or a circuit race or even NASCAR because it's at least like a head-to-head race, and there's like a defined, this guy's in first, or there's somewhat of a battle, for third or something. It's something that you could visually see.
You're absolutely right. The battles are the thing that some of those battles you really sort of get sucked into, and you don't really think about the fact that they're just zeros and ones on a screen. You know what I mean? Like
Right, yeah.
Lando Norris and I forgot who he was racing. I mean, there have been some good battles in both the F1, on F1 and in NASCAR that make it really worth watching. I mean, yeah, you have to sort of forget that you're watching a video game, and it's sort of like anything else. You sort of suspend your disbelief. I mean, you're watching a movie; it's fiction. I mean, it's sort of there's a fictional aspect to watching sim racing that you just sort of your brain forgets about. And if it doesn't forget about it, it's not going to be a good experience, and you're probably not going to go back and watch it again. But
well, I mean, Talladega Nights, I mean, is really legit. I mean, if you just forget about that whole thing that it's a movie, I mean, it's very to the point.
Right. Exactly. Or Rush. I mean, that's the thing I love about the movie Rush
is a great movie.
Yeah, it's not completely the racing. It's being immersed in that time. With those people and those visuals. And the racing, I mean, if you're a real F1 fanatic about the 70s, I mean, you could probably point out places where they took liberties it's not accurate. And
yeah, of course. I mean, they're like everything. I mean, even the recent movie, what the hell was it called? Was it
of course,
Le Mans?
Sorry.
Ford versus Ferrari. Yeah. Like, I mean, obviously a lot of that wasn't, real, whatever, some of it wasn't real or whatever, but a lot of it was fairly accurate,
Right. And in some cases, the sim racing is actually more accurate than the movies. So, so you can sort of, I don't know. It's really, ultimately, it's about the competition, right? If you're watching good competition on the screen and you can sort of, you're not really thinking about that they're not real cars. And it's, you can, if you start rooting for somebody, then you're in. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
You see real good racecraft on the screen. As a racing fan, you can kind of go, yeah, that guy, the way that he sort of saw the next, sort of strategized the next three corners in order to get in front of whoever that is. If that's good, then the rest of it's going to come along. If you forget it's a sim.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so many weird aspects to it all, but it's obviously the future. Sims might actually, after this whole quarantine thing, I mean, Sims might become sort of a replacement,
or off season or some kind of thing. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, for a lot of people, I mean, it seems like, I mean, obviously on Facebook, I mean, I'm friends with a lot of racers. A lot of my friends are racers in different kinds of stuff, rally, hill climbs, circuit racing, drift kids. I mean, there's drift sims now, which I find to me, that's mind boggling because to me, drifting is all feel. You know what I mean? There's so much, there's so much feel to drifting that, like, I can't imagine a sim replicating that. There's just so much throttle control and clutch kicking and steering that doesn't even need to be like, you don't even need to hold the steering wheel, in a lot of cases with drifting. So like to have a sim steering wheel spin like a drift steering wheel would in real life is almost non-existent. To me, that's like, it's really strange, but there is like, there's all these guys that I see on Facebook. They're like, oh man, I'm buying the sim. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And it's just like wow, like it's cool to some sense of things, but like, it almost makes you wonder, like, is this going to be like the breaking point for a lot of racing series? Because real life racing, it's not that it's not growing, it's growing, but like at a snail's pace. And it's not growing on a professional end, it's growing on a grassroots end.
Yeah.
So from the aspect of what most non-racers see racing as, in the sense of, oh, pro racing, it's all these big sponsors, it's maybe TV views, it's maybe big grandstands with a bunch of people in it. At a grassroots racing level, that's not a reality. I mean, all of us are just pouring money out of our pockets to go racing. And all we're doing at the end of the day, if we're lucky, if we win, we're getting, a $3 wooden trophy is my favorite saying. We're getting a $3 wooden trophy. Ooh, big deal. We spend thousands of dollars, and all this time prepping the cars and traveling to the races. And, oh, cool, we won. I got a $3 wooden trophy. Sweet. But like, some of the race series, they have some contingency plans, with other companies where, the guys who are winning are at least getting some sort of contingency, or they're maybe getting a little bit of cash in their pockets, or whatever, whatever it may be. But that is so few and far between for grassroots racing, that the professional level is just so small at this point that, this whole quarantine and everybody buying a sim, the guys who are at the lower level like me, who are like, oh yeah, cool, like I could buy a really good sim rig for, whatever Rob said in his article, $7,500 or whatever it is, like $7,500 for me. When I'm looking at it, I go, oh God, $7,500. Like I could almost build an entire race car for $7,500.
Right.
You know what I mean? Especially where we can do the roll cages and stuff in house. I could almost build a car for $7,500. You know what I mean? But like,
well, I mean, you got to figure though. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, if there's any possibility that you're going to actually go racing in real life, it's a way to get you in the door. But eventually, you have to, the skills aren't going to completely transfer. But then again, like there are 40 million. I mean, and again, like then we start talking about like what's a sim and what's just a video game. Like,
right.
I don't want to get into that. I'm not on, this isn't Reddit. Like I'm not going to, like I know Assetto Corsa and I know iRacing is going to be much more, accurate than what's on Forza and has to do with engines and, whatever, it just gets so out of control. But the ultimate, mostly of the 40 million people that play, Forza or GT4 or GT whatever the fucking
GT30,
38, yeah. Probably 99% of those people are never going to get behind the wheel of a real race car, and so it's I think there's that aspect of it. It's the same thing as like none of us will ever get to fire upon aliens coming down in a bomb across the screen.
Now that's a game I'd like to play.
Exactly.
That's a sim I'd want to play.
The Space Invaders sim.
Space Invaders.
Like that was, and then you come across like that's so funny because like there's such a like if you tell kids now that like this was fun,
right?
Like shooting up at the thing coming across, just sort of a line coming down, and you're just shooting up at them. I mean, like, most of it is still just fantasy stuff. Like I was playing Asphalt Heroes or whatever the fuck that is. You ever play that? That's
what is it?
It's Asphalt. It's Asphalt something. It's the
the little game on the phone.
Right.
Yeah, I honestly I haven't played it. A bunch of my drift friends are playing that.
Asphalt 9, yeah. There is absolutely nothing. It's almost like there's zero. It's less than zero accuracy of that car, but it's exciting and it's real. Like it's a video game. So I mean,
right? Yeah, it's something to play. It's something to do.
Yeah, there's always going to be that kind of shit. I mean, the entertainment stuff. And then for me in the automotive media, it's it's interesting because, the audience for automotive media is starting to slow or starting to dwindle because the simulated experiences are so good, and you can get deep into the setup of a sports car in Forza in a way that a magazine article just can't bring you to that point.
Right.
So
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's I think the in terms of discovery and learning about cars and becoming the next generation car nerd, there are there's so many reasons to be to not read magazines anyway, or not read sites anyway. So it's really shifted from features to news on the internet, because it's more about what the novelty is. Because then if you want to really drive a 911 GT3 RS, you just go to Forza and there it is, and you can mess with it in the way that you might mess with it if you owned it and had a bunch of money to do that. So eventually cars are going to be launched digitally instead of in real life, as the simulations get better. And eventually, will people go to car shows as much? I don't know. Maybe they'll want to get out of the house, and go to see actual.
Right. Yeah. I mean, car shows. Just to sort of touch on that for a few minutes. I mean, we've been talking for over an hour at this point, but I was hoping to keep this to like 20, 30 minutes, but we get on our tangents and we talk. Yeah, we get on our tangents and we talk about all kinds of stuff. But just to touch on the whole car show scene, because I mean, you guys are obviously, Drive is so big in new automotive journalism, new product that's coming out, that sort of thing. I mean, what do you think about the whole shows getting canceled? I mean, what was it, Geneva, Detroit, or LA, or whatever got canceled? I don't even know. I mean,
well, so Geneva was canceled. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. So it's funny how when you're an automotive journalist, the world revolves. Well, all right, if you're an automotive journalist up until, let's say, this year, the world revolves around the shows, right? So the holidays are over, New Year's comes, and then you realize, oh shit, Geneva's coming. So either, if you're in the sort of traditional automotive media, maybe you're going to go to Geneva. And I went to Geneva every year for 10 years. And it's my favorite show because you get the Italian design firms are all there. You get the German tuners are half there and half in Frankfurt, but there's a lot of stuff there. All the supercar stuff is there. Koenigsegg is always there.
Right. All the stuff we don't have here.
All the stuff we don't have here. Right, exactly. So that was always something I look forward to. But for most people, well, all right. And then also when we started Jalopnik, I went to Geneva because flights were cheap in 2004.
Right.
And 5 and 6. So the shows became a very big part of doing your job, right? So you go to
yeah.
I mean, the car companies knew that that's when their new models were going to come out, or when they used to do prototypes and concept cars and show cars that were exciting, which they don't really do that much anymore.
Yeah, they don't really do that anymore.
Yeah. It was a big deal. So we would go to Geneva, we take all the pictures, put all the pictures online. We try to get them up faster than Autoblog. Meanwhile, we were friendly, but it's always this competition thing. And then we'd move on. And then the next show was, I forgot Detroit. Detroit was the first show.
Right. Yeah.
New Year's is over. You go to Detroit, you absorb all of that big, all the American stuff and all of that. The Detroit show was always very big. It was freezing cold, but everyone piled on Detroit. And then in March you went to Geneva, and Geneva was the exotics, and that was of course my favorite show. And then New York comes up after that. The big New York show is AMG does a big thing there. Subaru, there are cars on the East Coast that the car companies on the East Coast do a lot of stuff. Jaguar used to do a lot.
Yeah.
And then you just sort of follow, and then LA and then Frankfurt or Paris, and then LA, and then
Japan.
Japan, right? Tokyo, and then
Yeah.
the Chinese shows started coming in. So like there would be Beijing, and then there would be, so like we would sort of follow this circus, right, throughout the whole year. And it was very different than the way most people do it. So like when most people got their information from automotive media, it was a very big deal because we made it a big deal, right? I mean, it was like
Right.
when most of the audience is getting their information from one place, like we would all just do the thing and people would come to it. Now it's totally different because not only our shows the cycle is less relevant, because eventually Doug DeMuro is going to do a video. He's going to go through every part of the car, and you're going to get to see the whole car unboxed, all the switches. He's going to do like every detail, and that'll be that. And then there'll be somebody else that does that too. So there's so much information. There's so much more media coming at people that's not traditional media. And then there's Twitter, right? So a car company, all they have to do is sort of, they want to get a new model out in front of people. There it is, It used to be that we have to focus everybody's attention around these particular times of year. And now, like, the whole year is up for grabs. Like the cycle doesn't matter so much anymore, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a big deal. I think shows are important because people still want to get out of the house and do something, right?
Right.
Cars and coffee. You can see how big cars and coffees have gotten.
Yeah.
But the big auto shows, like you don't have to go to New York to see a McLaren. I mean, if it's up close, because somebody's going to buy it and somebody's going to bring it to your local cars and coffee at some point, and you're going to see a 720S.
Right.
You're going to see like there are parts of the country that maybe you'll never see a 720S unless you go to a car show.
Right.
And it's a different story.
Right.
So I think what's happened is everything has gotten very localized and very fragmented. And, I don't know, the Super Bowl, right, is still a time when people have to watch those two teams play, right? That'll never go away. But anything that that you can see at other times, that, like, I don't know, it's not as big a deal anymore.
Yeah.
There's so many other channels of information and so many more local things to do. So I think
it's just a weird shift in like you're saying, it's just like a weird shift in what you're calling traditional media.
Yeah.
Traditional automotive media. It's just a weird shift to see, like, I mean, I grew up in the bigger auto shows, New York, Detroit, Boston, Philadelphia, DC. When I was a kid, my dad was the national, North American sales training manager for Peugeot.
That's right.
From 81 to 91. So during those 10 years, my first 10 years of life, we were constantly traveling to different shows, and it was just such a big part of my life. So like, for most people, I understand, most consumers, most people, the automotive show, it's just, it's a time of year when you go and see what the new models are. You go to the Javits Center, or I mean, I'm going way back to the old Civic Center.
I remember that.
New York City.
Sure.
That was right up the street from the Javits Center now. But I mean, like, you just go there and, you steal your shift knobs and you get some, you get some you get some magazines or something, you sit in your car. These days you walk around with your iPhone, you get your cool, picture of you in your car, and you make everybody, all your friends on your Instagram think it's yours or some shit. That's like a thing for the, for the bigger shows like that. But like where Detroit got canceled, right? It was Detroit that got canceled, right?
Recently, yeah.
It was before all this crazy, virus mess, but Detroit getting canceled and then Geneva getting canceled. It's almost like it's this crazy weird shift where like traditional automotive media and press launches at those shows are, like you're saying, they're almost becoming irrelevant.
Yeah.
And it's such a weird shift in things in the automotive world now that like
Yeah.
people that have been around like me and you, it's such a weird thing to not see those.
Yeah. It is a weird thing for us, but for automakers are doing so much of their own media now, right? So
Yeah.
they'll hire that, and you take that, and then you take the fact that there's so much noise now that they have to rise above. It's very difficult, right? Like there's so much clutter in our lives and our attention spans right now that in order, like car companies are starting to do counter programming so that they can be the center of attention at some point. They started that counter programming during car show weeks because they would move their launch further and further before the press days. So like if the first press days of an auto show were like, used to be like Tuesday and Wednesday were the press days, or Wednesday and Thursday, the car company would say, oh, well, we're going to launch our car on Tuesday night or
Right.
Monday night. And then they started going to Sunday night. And then they started doing stuff like the Friday before. So they would fly a bunch of people in. They would do their own thing in the same city where the car show was. And then all the journalists would fly out before the show even happened. Like, it was like, I get it, because counter programming is how you get attention now. If it doesn't do any car company any good to be part of a big stream of information that's flying all at the same time. It does. So
Of course not.
so for them, it doesn't even matter what part of it to be part of a car show. And you see that in New York. Audi was out even before it was canceled. BMW was out. All the Germans were out of the New York show, and that was giant because they were always big in the New York show from the time Max Hoffman opened up his dealership in the 50s. Like New York and German cars went hand in hand because of that legacy. So all this legacy shit's going out the window because car companies have to make sure that the car gets seen.
Right.
So it doesn't mean that people don't want to see the car in person at some point, but it does mean that it's very difficult for them to really get out of auto shows what they used to get out of them, and that's attention.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. I don't think it's necessarily a consumer driven issue. It's not because people weren't showing up to the shows. It's because the manufacturers, the way that they're, the way that they're sort of letting the cat out of the bag on their new products or whatever, just has completely changed. The game's just not what it used to be. Like you said, manufacturers now are their own media machine, whereas before they were 100% relying on a third-party review from the media. They weren't like everybody was. The mindset was always we're the manufacturer making the car and selling the car, but we need somebody else to review it. Some third party.
It's really interesting that there's been a significant shift in terms of the trust in automotive media anyway. So like they used to give a car to a reviewer because people inherently trusted a third party more than the company, because the company would do advertisements and you knew that you needed a guy like Tom McCahill at Popular Mechanics or at Mechanics Illustrated back in the 50s. Tom McCahill, if Tom McCahill said that the car was good, it was good. Nowadays, cars have become much more complicated, so they're harder to review. So there are a lot of people who sort of review and then having a voice at all, starting a blog or being part of an automotive media organization of different sizes of organization. So anyone can do a review. Pretty much anyone can write about a car. And it's so at the same time, all those voices are coming together, and they're coming together in such a way that there's so much noise that the counter to that is that no one can be trusted at all in the media anymore. So like there are even more people now who don't trust anything that the media says. So I mean that's a broader issue that goes across all kinds of media. It's not just, it's also
Oh
in
yeah.
obviously politics, but devices and cars especially. You know, you go on Reddit and everyone's always trashing journalists for saying one thing or another. The
Right.
fact is that, you know, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to well, when it comes to figuring out what the truth is, there's so many facets to what truth is. I don't want to get too far into this, but like, you know, if you love Mitsubishis, right, and a journalist says that a Subaru is better than Mitsubishi, all the Mitsubishi guys are going to say the journalist is biased. In some
Right.
is biased against Mitsubishi. Whether they are or not doesn't matter, because it's the sport of arguing for the thing that you love.
Right.
Well, now there's so many outlets to argue for the thing that you love that now, like, look at what the Tesla guys have done to the truth. Some of what they say is right. You know, some of what they say is that the automotive media maybe didn't get what Tesla was doing in the beginning. But at the same
Right.
time, they're also ignoring things that the automotive media used to be relied on to bring out. Their
Right.
paint sucks. There are a couple of, you know, there are some issues with their build quality. And that's the thing that the media would say. But now that you have this, I mean, this is all just big media issues.
Yeah.
It's just an example of how messages are so difficult to get across now. And
Yeah.
if you're in
Yeah.
the you're stuck in the middle of all this stuff. You're stuck in the
Yeah.
middle of all these enthusiasts that are trying to support their own points of view, and they can because they have Twitter. So
Right.
so there's no reason to trust a journalist anymore because they're
Yeah.
not
It's like,
putting voice out there. Anyway, I don't know.
yeah, it's
That's
like all of a sudden, yeah, no, but you know, it's like all of a sudden now that, like you're saying, like everybody's got, you know, everybody can say anything, and anybody could be an automotive journalist, you know, without any real credibility. You know, and the fact that print media is out the door, you know, it's almost as if, yeah, like the manufacturers just have to step up and be, you know, be their own media machine, and despite the nuances of, you know, uh, us as automotive media telling people like, oh yeah, no, the car looks great, but it rides like shit, or
right.
you know, it's got all these rattles or whatever, you
Well,
know, it may be.
yeah, and it's interesting. Like most cars don't ride like shit. I mean, most cars,
These
you know what I
days,
mean? These days it's very difficult. So
yeah,
the nuances are very particular, right? I mean, there are cars that I think lean very heavily on adjustable suspensions and stuff where they have a sport mode that rattles your ass off and you're never going to use it and you want more compliance, but you're never going to. So the thing is, when you get to the media, you end up trusting the people that shit on cars the most, because the more they shit on something, the more you just assume they don't have an agenda. So
right,
you know what I mean? So everything sort of then leads to the people that have the most extreme opinions about things.
right,
So
and that doesn't bode well for, you know, that doesn't bode well for manufacturers. Manufacturers don't like their cars being reviewed and being put down and shit on, and that, from like your end, they're not going to give you a car to review if you're just constantly shitting on their stuff.
well, if you're so the thing about that is that if the automakers that I know, the guys that are the most knowledgeable who shit on their stuff, you know,
Right,
they will always give cars to. Jason Camisa will always get cars. Dan
right,
Neal will always get cars. Those guys, there are a lot of guys in the traditional media that I know that are very knowledgeable that will always get cars. no matter what they say, because car makers have a relationship with them over the years, and they know
Right.
that they're going to get, even if they're shitting on them, they're going to get actionable information that they can use, that they can send back to the development team. I mean, it's really, that does happen.
Yeah.
With, PR people and really good automotive journalists have very different kinds of relationships than the PR people have with journalists who are either new or have less experience.
Right. Yeah.
You
Well, that's
know?
the thing. You couldn't come out of the box as like a true automotive journalist. Like if you're watching this, you're like, oh yeah, this sounds great. I want to be an automotive journalist. And you go out there and you start shitting on cars right away. You ain't getting cars.
Yeah, and the problem with shitting on a car anyway is that if you're fair to the automaker, which a lot of people who come out of the box and start shitting on cars that they don't like aren't really fair, right? I mean, they're like, the car looks like a fish or it looks like shit. It drives like this. It's numb. Well, listen, every car is numb. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we live in a numb time.
Yeah.
But if you have a very specific issue with the way that the EPS is calibrated, because I think engineers are just finally figuring out after 10 years how to really get to the heart of programming their EPS in terms of calibration. Right. But if you're just shitting on them to shit on them because you have an undeveloped personal opinion, which we all do. I mean, listen.
Right.
Then you're never going to develop a relationship that's productive with the car company. And that's the thing that I think new journalists don't understand, is that they feel like they have to get credibility by shitting on the car, right? Or else people won't believe them. If they don't say something negative, no one's going to believe them. So that's the first thing. So yeah, you come out and you start shitting on a car, then PR person's like, your audience is like 4 people. Why should I give you a car if you're just going to shit on the thing? And then they have a bad experience with the PR people, and their career goes nowhere, and they get angry, and then they end up on Reddit talking about how it's all fixed. And it's not. It really isn't. You know what I mean? Like,
no, of course it's not.
Yeah, and that's why a lot of journalists started out as engineers and then became journalists.
Yeah, they're either engineers or they're race car drivers or, whatever. They had some sort of automotive credibility or some sort of engineering credibility to their name, before they started reviewing cars,
Right. Yeah, so I mean, and then there are just some shitty journalists who write for places that don't give a shit, that are a little bit mainstream anyway. So they can whatever. Like if you're writing for a newspaper, they don't give a fuck about the very specifics of driving dynamics. That's what it is.
Right.
So, so and then like, it's very easy to shit on a journalist right now. It's all the rage. Everybody loves shitting on automotive journalists. All the kids are doing it. So like,
man.
So if you want to seem credible to your crowd, just say that the journalist is on the take and you look like you're a fucking genius. So I don't know, there are all kinds of things that are happening now in terms of voices popping up from everywhere. And man, it's never been harder to figure out what the truth is. So I think
for sure, it's tough.
Doug Demure, I think people really like him because he's an outsider. He doesn't, you know what I mean? Like he doesn't have to say anything. He doesn't get press card. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that he's made it very clear to his audience that he isn't in the thing. And I think outsiders,
because he's just reviewing used cars. Basically. Yeah. He's not reviewing new product that are out there. He's just getting some dude's car he met at Cars and Coffee and just doing a review on it.
Right. And people feel much more comfortable with that. People feel like Doug is a guy that is just a guy that they know and isn't working for the media, which has an agenda,
Right. Yeah.
And that's listen, if that's what people trust now, that's what people trust now. There's nothing that we can fucking do about it. Like there's nothing we can do. Try our best. We just try our best and be who we are. And over time, you read the things that I write or read the things that other people on the drive write or the other people at Motor Trend or Car and Driver or whatever the media outlet is. And over time, you see how that person reacts to what your questions are on Twitter. You see if they can answer the things that you say. As a writer, I always go to the negative comments first and try to answer them and see if they're just testing me. Because a lot of times it's testing, and then you go back and you go, well, yeah, no, but when it comes to the struts on a Cayman, the reason why it feels a little bit squirrely under braking is because there's no extra links, or whatever. I'm just riffing because
you're just
because
saying stuff. Yeah,
but it's really because people want to know that there's a human being behind the keyboard and not some drone. And if you're a human being, that's where the personality-driven stuff comes up, and that's where people on watching YouTube videos really like personality-driven stuff, because it's about trust anyway. It all comes down to trust.
Right.
And I think it's easy to hate everybody as a whole, but it's very hard to hate individuals. So I think I think that's where journalists need to learn about how to interact with their audiences and help them get to where your point of view is by giving them the backstory of it.
Right. Yeah.
So that's my soapbox. For the day.
Yeah. I mean, we've been talking here now almost 2 hours. Let's actually wrap it up right there before we get caught on another topic that we can have another half an hour on. But yeah, no, I really appreciate you coming on. It's a lot of interesting points I think we talked about. I mean, our audience, is obviously a growing thing right now. So, I mean, at some point, a lot of people will look into this and see it and go, oh yeah, they ramble on for a while, but there's a lot of good points that we got there. So I'm happy about that, because a lot of times we get together, it could just literally be rambling for hours.
Yeah. So, we're right. I mean,
at least.
Yeah. We'll have times where it'll be 3 or 4 hours go by and, 10 Guinnesses.
And we won't even know what we talked about.
Right.
So,
well, cool.
But anyways,
Bill.
Yeah, definitely. And, at some point we'll have you on again and we'll talk about other things. I'm sure. So,
anytime. It's always fun.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate it again, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Bill. See you soon.
To unify it. That's the thing. Yeah, that's that outfit.